Howdy, howdy, folks, and welcome to Atheist on Air Beyond the Trailer Park, episode 196. We are creeping closer to that 200, and hopefully we'll make 200 before Hangouts on Air goes bye-bye, because, they're getting rid of it with, from what I've heard, no viable options, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, tonight we have with us as a special guest host Steve DiMarco from Atheist News as usual. Hello, Steve.
How's it going?
Good. Other than I'm half asleep. And from the swamps of Mississippi, we have Miss Morgan.
Hey.
Howdy.
Hey.
From the swamps?
Oh, sounded good in my head.
I'm from the hills and the swamps and the forests and the farms. It's a
landmass.
The landmass between Mobile and New Orleans.
Yeah, and Sammy will be joining us, I hope, shortly, but she was running a bit late, so anything new and exciting before we delve into tonight?
No.
I love that delay. We all had to think about whether we had anything new or exciting going on in our life.
I mean, if you have to think about it, is it new or exciting? I would say probably not.
Well, I don't know if it's really... I don't know. I don't consider it exciting, but I got 2 days off in a row.
That is always exciting.
For me, it is because I usually only get Mondays off. But I have been getting Thursdays off. But
in a row is always nice.
Yes, because I had a weekend from hell. I worked, I think, almost 30 hours in 3 days.
Yeah.
Which for most people probably wouldn't be a lot, but yeah, when you're back
on the job.
Yeah, I'm on my feet the entire time doing dishes. Well, I had done, doing prep, doing dishes, and because of the hemiparesis, after so many hours, my back says bye, which makes walking fun.
Yeah, for me, it's my brain, because I'm now having to use my brain more, in this course of work I'm in. And so I feel like when I get off of work, I have like 2 brain cells that are just trying desperately to get me through.
See, I know this is going to sound terrible, but my job really, I've been there 10 years.
Yeah.
Is kind of brainless.
Yeah. See, yeah, because I was I was head server for a while when I was in the food business. I did that for from time I was, about 16 to, I did it for about 8 years. 8 or 9 years.
I've been in food service for, it will now be 45 years.
Yeah, no, I got out after 8.
I tried, but it never worked. So
yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, but now I'm picturing Morgan getting off work and going to fill in highlights for kids, just because it's the only thing she can manage.
Yeah, I'm seriously, I'm just like, what are words? I'll be typing like this eloquent motion at work, and then I get home and I'll say things like, "What do now? What do now?" Like, I can't even form complete sentences half the time now. It's great.
Yeah, that's how I know when I'm getting too overtired.
Yeah,
like, I'll look at it. Because a lot of times, especially when I speak because of the apraxia from the strokes, what's up here does not come out of this.
And yeah, my ADHD complicates it too.
And half the time people look at me like, what the fuck did you just say? And I'm like, I have no clue. What did I say? Or I'll read a post I made. I'm like, yeah, so...
Yeah, I'm either like quoting the Encyclopedia of Mississippi Law at work, or either now I'm like, I don't remember the last sentence that came out of my mouth, so sorry. It's just like, because I'm used to, as a student, like even then you had like somewhat of breaks, and then I thought that this week, I had just a few things to do It was, it was just going to finish up a complaint, do a bunch of other stuff.
Nope.
No, got a surprise motion to this. So, yay.
I think, I mean, I give you and those like you that do similar jobs a lot of credit, because to be honest, I don't think now I would have the capacity to focus on, something as important as writing a motion for the Supreme Court of Mississippi. Although I can spend 8-10 hours in one spell working on my blog, but making a mistake on my blog does not have dire consequences as fucking up a motion.
Thank you. I'll remember that going in tomorrow. I'm like, it's just like, I was just like panicking with every word. I'm like, did I spell "and" correctly?
Yeah. I mean, I'll go back through my postings and my blog posts, and I'll be like, what the fuck was I saying? Or why, I'll find spelling mistakes that I've missed. So I'll correct it and just go on. Whereas, like, something that you do, you don't have that luxury.
No, but sometimes I do send stuff to my bosses if I did have a luxury, so...
Yeah. So,
it's like, Morgan, this is not a sentence. What is this?
Yeah.
But I know somebody else is going to check it. But yeah, for this, I'm being like, oh God, what's happening? So yeah, that's new and exciting corner for me, I guess, is that I had a real Monday today.
Yeah. So tonight, how to phrase this? We're going to attempt to tackle what is known as Project Blitz. And I'll start out with this quote. In 2018 alone, more than 70 Project Blitz related bills, including measures that attack LGBTQ people, undermine access to reproductive health care, and attempt to inject religion into public schools, were introduced in state legislatures across the nation. So we have seen, prior to Project Blitz coming out, basically the religious right throwing these religious liberty cases against the wall, hoping one strand of spaghetti might sit. And when it initially started, when I started writing about it back in 2013 and 14, while there was a planned agenda behind it, nobody really paid much attention. Well, in the last, I'll say 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, I don't remember how long I've been tracking this, they're calling it Project Blitz now. So they've basically have come out and said, this is what we're going to do, and it's not going to be pretty, as we already have seen with some of the anti-trans bills and stuff like that. So we're going to talk Project Blitz, or we're going to try to. And just as a little tidbit, and when I say they're, the people that are really, really tracking this, are predicting that more than 200 Project Blitz bills will be filed this year. I don't think we're quite going to make it, because I don't think we're over 90 yet, and we're already halfway through the year, but who knows? So, Morgan, tell us succinctly, what's Project Blitz to you?
Well, so for me, my interpretation basically is this is more...
What's Project Blitz to you?
All right, so to me, what it is, it's... Sorry, I was getting some playback. But so for Project Blitz, it's kind of similar to me to what ALEC does for conservatives. So it's this coordinated effort by the religious right, essentially to instill this platform of what I call Christian nationalism. You'll hear that term. Other people use it as well. Some people think it's a little bit too strong on the rhetoric, but I mean, that's essentially what it is. It's this coordinated effort, and it's full of these small bills, which are things like what is it? Things like, so for example, Mississippi did something like passing this license plate bill, right? And it seems like it's not a big deal. Because what it is it's a license plate and it's ugly as fuck. Our last license plate was pretty awesome looking. It had a guitar on it because it was like, we invented the blues down here, right? And before then it was the lighthouse because of Hurricane Katrina. Well, this one, it is like cat pee yellow, and it says, "In God We Trust" on the seal, right? And they changed the state seal last year, I'm sure, planning on doing this. And this is what it's showing. I mean, and it's also not just something that some Mississippi legislators came up with. If you look at the Project Blitz documents, specifically in there, they encourage states to use religious iconography or religious mottos like "In God We Trust" on things like license plates.
And it's already on the coin anyways and on every single bill, so it's just every single day hammered into fucking America mind. And like the young kids don't even know.
Yeah.
They just see it on their money every day. Then "God We Trust." A license plate, and "God We Trust." God is hammered into their day. And then you wonder why average white Christian America is fucking worried about Sharia law. Look at your own bills. Look at your own bills. Ah!
Well, that goes to a point that I wrote about years ago called ceremonial deism.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was all the, like "In God We Trust." And there were two cases. In fact, it was David Silverman when he was still with American Atheists. He was on a podcast called America Free Thinkers. Can't remember. Sorry, John. But he had an interview, and it was actually before I became more active. And it always stuck with me because basically what would happen, there was they were putting crosses for fallen state police.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these officers were not Christian.
Yeah.
And their argument was, it's just a cross of remembrance. It has no religious symbolism. Which,
even though that's their whole thing, like, why do you wear a cross around your neck? Is it just in ceremonial remembrance of
considering
whatever?
the Supreme Court this past week?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, this is going back now it's 6 years, because I think I wrote.
It's all part of this coordinated effort. And what my thing about the license plate is, they're doing these smaller things to lead to these big things, like when the Supreme Court finally decides on these things, because it seems like it's not a big deal. And actually, this is very interesting that we're talking about this whole license plate thing, because Tate, we have a governor's race happening this year in Mississippi, right. And our lieutenant governor, Tate Reeves, I call the pair of them, the governor, Phil Bryant, and Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, I call him Phil Billy and Tater Tot. But, so Tater Tot here, he has been running all these ads that he's putting up his license plate, and he says, because American Humanists, they, filed a complaint. I don't know if they've gotten as far as filing a complaint, but they basically threatened legal action. They said, hey, at least allow Mississippians to have an alternative without a cost, At least allow that much, but apparently that's Sharia law to let people have choices. So he's in this ad, and he's saying out-of-state liberals he's basically saying out-of-state liberals are telling us what to do. And he uses that specific phrase, out-of-state liberals, which is hilarious because I'm an in-state socialist. So go figure with that. But
I actually reported on this past weekend's Atheist News, and what I found most interesting is also the Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. They're also working on it as well, but it has to do with the fact that to get the different license plate, you have to pay extra for it.
Yeah, I pay extra for a different one, which I didn't mind because my money went to help conservation for me. It actually went to a cause that I care about, but still, the fact
that's what they're basing their argument on, is that it's a tax on the non-religious.
Yeah, I mean, it is, because I probably would have gotten...
It wasn't just Tate who is using this. The treasurer, Lynn Fitch in Mississippi, is also running for attorney general, and she's using out-of-state liberals in her as well.
Oh, when she becomes attorney general, we are truly fucked, because actually we've had a Democrat attorney general here in Mississippi for a while. Now, he is one of those that does defend a few of these, bills, like he's defending the abortion one right now. But, I mean, he always goes with the whole thing of, it's my job. Now, there has been some that he just, refuses to defend, or you can tell he's able to convince people, hey, if you want to hire Americans defending freedom, Phil Bryant, go ahead, but I ain't fucking doing it. But, so he's running for governor right now as the Democrat against Tate Reeves, who's running as a Republican, but also there's a third Republican running for governor, who was a Supreme Court justice for Mississippi, Justice Waller. So,
sometimes I wonder if Mississippi just goes, good thing we're not Alabama in terms of...
Well, I mean, we truly do.
We do. Alabama, and sorry I'm late, friends.
Hello.
Hello there, guest.
You came in pretty hot, so I didn't want to interrupt and say hello.
No, that's okay, Captain Blue Stripes. I'm Samantha. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm Captain Blue Stripes.
I'm a little bit late, but holy shit, Alabama. I've got 3 sisters right now in Alabama, and holy fuck, one of the counties has its own religious police force now.
Yeah.
Yes, at a church.
Holy fuck, and you're worried about Sharia law in America. You now have a police force that can arrest 2 men for kissing. They can arrest 2 men for kissing.
Assumably, it's not going to make it. The courts are going to have to overturn that, because how can you grant a police force to Briarwood Presbyterian Church, and every church across the country is now going to want their own police force?
But Briarwood's the largest Presbyterian force almost in America, if not in that state.
It's about giving them...
They pay a shit ton. A shit ton of money to the government.
The problem is that they're giving them authority and power to make arrests unrelated to their church.
Yep.
So that's going to be the biggest issue. What's going to happen when a mosque in Alabama also wants to have their own police force?
Nothing, because the mosque in Alabama was already fucking lit off with Molotov cocktails earlier in February, and nobody did anything. Nobody did anything.
Of the courts and equality, they can either strike down Briarwoods or let them allow them to have their own police force.
I could see them. I could see them weaseling in something though, like American values or something like that, to try to fight it still, or tradition.
Well, I can't actually see where they could try and do that, because, to Sam's point, because I don't know if y'all heard about this, but Alabama executed a man who asked to see his imam before he was executed, and the Alabama Supreme Court said no. They would have allowed a Christian priest. So there is this wiggle room. But then again, with that, you get into federal questions and stuff. But yeah, the reason we have to watch out for these small, people will be like, why the fuck do you care about it in God we trust being on the money or on license plates or whatever? And it's because they then use, and it's in their outline. It's in the Project Blitz outline. They then use these small victories to do these bigger things, to where they can say, oh, well, they let us have In God We Trust on the license plate, so now you can teach creationism in schools.
And I was reading about that Muslim prisoner, if I'm not mistaken, for the last 2 weeks of his time there before they put him up for death row, sadly. They fed him pork sandwiches every day like assholes.
I did not hear that.
All they would give him. It was all they would give him. It's very common for Muslim death row prisoners to be mocked in that way. The most heinous way you could possibly do.
The only thing, because I reported on that as well, and the only thing of note that I saw in terms of their defense was that they said they couldn't get a security clearance for an imam in time.
Bullshit.
That was security bullshit.
Yeah, because I've gotten a security clearance within 48 hours to go to death row in fucking Mississippi. So bet your
I mean, it's definitely bullshit. But
because the imam isn't white.
Not hard.
The imam isn't white, so
yeah. So they got to do an extra background check on him. I'm sure.
You might have a bomb in him, so fuck's sake.
Going back to a point we've been starting out with, as I said, I've been writing about this, and I just pulled up the post concerning David Silverman. I take that back. I've been writing about this for about 10 years now. But one of the things he said, and this kind of sums up this whole throw spaghetti on the wall, and this is a paraphrase, it's not a direct quote, is that he said that when these types of laws, the religious liberty laws, come into play, we have to fight them or they become precedent.
Yes.
The next steps will go further still. The religious right has been playing a game of baby steps since the 1950s, with the phrase "one nation under God" was placed in pledge, and when "in God we trust" was placed on our money. Those few words are the basis of all these other laws because everyone thinks they are supposed to be there.
It was just a reaction to communism. It was.
Well, yeah,
the Soviet
that's where
Union were atheists, so that's how they pushed it through.
That's. But you ask anybody on the street, I'll tell you right now, they won't be able to answer that question. And why? Why did this happen? They don't know. They think the founding fathers, because David Barton, which we will come back to, and his ilk are pushing this garbage history.
Yeah, and Dinesh D'Souza too. Now, I'd say Dinesh D'Souza is probably the new David Barton. I've noticed.
Damn it!
D'Souza's been like. I've seen him getting more and more national attention as far as, his movies and everything than David Barton recently.
He's flouting the law. While David Barton is in Wall Builders is part of this Project Blitz. But yeah, Silverman goes on, these things have to be fought and fought on a regular basis whenever the government endorses religion by force, which is what they are doing. And this is referring to the case in Kentucky and Colorado back in 2011. And the thought that crossed my mind while I was listening to this podcast initially, almost 10 years ago, was my God can beat up your God, which screams religious zealotry. But he goes on, if, as they state, the cross is not a Christian symbol, only being used as a secular memorial applicable to all, which secularization, sorry, can't say that word, of the cross, then they, at this time the state of Utah, do not have to be concerned with equal access or the First Amendment. They can then be placed wherever they want. These now secular monuments may be placed on public lands without a constitutional issue. And so he goes on, saying, all these little challenges, the bakery cases, the challenges to the ACA, especially concerning contraception. Now we're seeing it with the, issues concerning transgender, as far as the military bans. We're seeing it with even the bans against Muslims. These all have a specific agenda behind them, and that's what Project Blitz is.
Yeah, and this isn't a conspiracy theory either. I mean, it's documented out. And in fact, if you, Mississippi, before they did the license plate one, they did one. It was called some people in the press called it the Turn Away the Gay bill, which basically legalized discrimination against, based on your, and again, we see this happening with these little bills. Instead of it being sincerely held religious belief, it's becoming sincerely held belief so that anybody, even if you're not religious, can use these laws in the name of tradition, and again, that gives it precedent for saying that these kind of values are tradition. And so we had that, and it said things like gender's determined at birth. You're either a man or a woman. And, things like that. And technically that's still on our books because they said that nobody had yet been injured by the law. But bet your ass we're going to use this as freaking precedent to get some of these more heinous things pushed through. And people don't realize it. People think that there's going to be just one day they're going to try to implement a law that's just like, oh, it's illegal to be anything but Christian. No, it's not. That's not how it's going to, start.
Well,
it's going to start with this kind of these more subtle things. And as we see now, they're doing bills like allowing students to take Bible classes as an elective, and instead and they're going to definitely be taught religiously. I mean, it's not like they're going to offer Quran classes or even a religious comparison class where it's like you're taking all kinds of religious texts. It's just going to be purely on like Old Testament, New Testament. Guess what? Those are the same classes I took at guess where? French Camp Academy. And soon that's going to be held as precedent for why public schools should mandate it eventually, because it's going to be, there's precedent because we already allow students to take it, so we might as well mandate it. I mean, it's already done.
Well,
that's why we need to fight it.
Yeah, well, a point that you made is that, this is not a conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
That they actually produced a document, a policy guide created by these Christian nationalists that they sent to 700 plus lawmakers. And within this document, and I do have a copy that I forgot to put the link in the description, but I will, so you can actually read this document. They have 21 model bills, strategies, and a messaging guide in this document.
Yeah, so even rhetoric. So things to say in response to criticism, things to like, it reminded me so much of like, here's what you say to argue for your faith. It reminded me so much of that, but it's for these legalistic things, and it's wrong. And the people who made this, as far as the lawyers and the people who are in that field, they know better, but they know exactly what they're doing at the same time, because they know that through this incrementalism, they can get this, their agenda pushed forward more and more every day, and eventually they're going to be able to get what they want to. I mean, it's the same thing with their court strategy they've had from day one. Yeah. Essentially they've packed the courts without really even having to. Mitch McConnell allowed them to do that. And, and it's, again, it's like, we've got to do something better than just, oh, well, maybe we can ask him nicely. Fuck no. When has Mitch McConnell done something when you ask him nicely?
Yeah.
That's a supervillain.
What it reminds me of is the Wedge document concerning the creation evolution, not debate. And
not debate.
I don't know what else to call it. I mean, there's no,
debate, air quotes.
There is no debate. I mean,
but if you pretend there is one, then it makes it look like creationism's a viable thing. And again, that's another law where it's like,
it's all part of it.
Yeah, you can't be criticized, or you can't like get in trouble for teaching students creationism or alternative views, in science class. Like, that's, again, all part of it, instead of, teaching the facts and what people know. And
well, I think they saw the success, although not major, within the courts, because they got shot down, especially in Dover v. Kitzmiller. But they saw the success that the Wedge document had in implementing, trying to get, my ass hurts. I'm sorry. My back.
I don't remember that happening in the court.
They implemented your ass hurting. That's what they did.
That's the final step.
Your paper was all good, and they implemented an ass hurting like you wouldn't believe, son. Oh.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My chair is so uncomfortable. Did you just snort?
We need to save that for like the top 10, like best trailer park moments ever. That was golden, man. That was golden.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just came out of my mouth, but yeah, she's snorting. That's number 2 on the best list here.
Well, you done pig lead me. It's your fault.
But yeah, I think they've taken the successes that they imagined from the Wedge document and they've implemented it in Project Blitz. And what makes Project Blitz even more dangerous is that it's not just the creation evolution debate, but it's a threat to everybody. Women,
gender,
LGBTQ people, including eyes. I've seen some really, really nasty shit concerning intersexuals.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have to...
Who? Do they even know they exist? What?
Oh, they know they exist. Yeah. But,
yeah, I've been seeing some stuff too about how actually it's really, really rare and it never happens. Are you sure you're not making it up? And it's like, what the fuck? Because I get a newsletter from these Christian think tanks.
I have
because I hate myself.
That are sexual.
Because I hate myself. That's the.
But yeah, no, I do sometimes read them if I'm like, I need to get myself mad and hyped for something. So I'll be like, and I'll just go.
Oh wow, that'd be a way to get some, instead of using rock music for workouts, just
yeah.
I turn into the humanist Hulk.
But yeah, I mean, public students and families,
To be honest, it's not just the fact that these are just evil people who want to treat people like they're less than people, which is horrible. To me, there's also the issue of you have to fight these things. Absolutely. How much time is being wasted? How many other things could get done if all this energy wasn't wasted trying to stop them from pushing through these absolutely horrible, horrible bills?
I wonder if that is also, and I bet that is part of the strategy. It's you divide the troops here, essentially. Because we can't push forward progressive legislation.
And you see what's going on in Oregon right now when they don't have to. And they're going to the militias, or let's call them, gangs, because that's what they are. I mean, I hate
they are gangs.
I hate how they're called militias. They're freaking gangs of people.
They're gangs. Yeah, they're only gangs when they're brown people, though. Apparently.
Well, I saw a meme today, and I should have saved it. I didn't think to. And it listed 10 things that Hitler did to institute something like concentration camps. And one of the big things was otherize minorities, which we have going on.
I mean, we've had that from the beginning.
Yeah, but it was, I wish I could remember it better than what I do, but basically everything on the Hitler side compared to the current administration, not just Donald Trump, the whole administration and the GOP, were dead on. I mean, we've hit everyone except actually gassing people. And one of the commenters, and I don't know their background or anything, if they're in-law or whatever, but basically said, "Oh, that'll be coming soon."
If you think about it
already, it's just not broadcasted on the news.
I mean, Anne Frank died of typhoid. I mean, she died from bad conditions in a concentrated area, like a concentration camp.
They're not being gassed, but kids are dying. Kids are going missing.
Missing. The 1,800 fucking immigrant kids who went missing.
Yeah.
With still no record to this day of where they went, except for the 23 that mysteriously showed up with sexual assault injuries, but they don't want to talk about it.
Oh no, they said they're not responsible apparently for.
Oh right,
even though for any other place of work, if you hire people who are known to be like sexual assaulters and you look the other way, guess what? You're fucking liable for that.
Yeah.
You are fucking liable for that. And but no, apparently ICE thinks that they're different because here's the thing too. I've seen people say things like, "Oh, well, can we gather up food and supplies and stuff?" No, they already have food and supplies. They are taking that. I'm sorry, they're confiscating it because the cruelty is the fucking point. these are concentration camps, and anybody who says that they aren't has a reason to defend them. And I am very suspicious of their fucking motives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just find like the to not go too far out down the rabbit hole on this, away from Project Blitz, but I have family, or had, they're both passed now, that survived Auschwitz and Birkenau. I remember the firsthand stories that they told. I have friends who have parents who are still alive, by the way, who used to come to my school, my elementary and junior high, and I think they came to high school once, and spoke to us about the atrocities in concentration camps. And I sit there and read these stories coming out of Texas, and I just want to fucking scream. Not that it would do any good.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the thing. It's like the whole hopelessness of it depressing. But yeah, the thing is, it's like if they're making these, these incremental laws, it's basically like we're having to be spread out, putting out fires everywhere, because you're having to put out fires for these, these awful concentration camp situations. But then also we're having to fight, making sure that they don't in the future make it illegal to be a trans person just trying to exist, or make it, to where public schools become Christian nationalism brainwashing facilities. Like it's, and it's all to yeah, it's just they're dividing the troops, essentially. I mean, it's a good strategy. I'll admit it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great strategy.
And talking of
another issue of that strategy is how spread out the United States is, in terms of you have people in the Northeast who are horrified about hearing these stories, but to them, in their mind, oh, that's halfway across the country. There's nothing I can do about it. I just hope it gets stopped somehow. Not by them, but in the case of World War II Germany, it's a much smaller country, and they still got away with it. And nowadays in the United States, and thanks to the internet, there's a lot more visibility towards these things. However, the issue is that protesters can't. People have jobs. You can only get so many people to go there. And
they're still isolated. They're still isolated too, because these detention facilities, they're not going to build them in the middle of Houston, Texas, where people can see and people can have access to them. Thing is, they're not just going to let some random person walk by. But every report that I've heard from attorneys who go there, from doctors,
and you have all these government officials who refuse to go there and see the conditions.
Meanwhile, my governor ignorant. Yeah, meanwhile, my governor went to go play Army on the border. So, that's fine. It's fine. We have flooding, and Trump just said basically that if you're an individual, you can't get reimbursed by FEMA, only if you're a nonprofit. Funny how that works. Yeah, that just happened. So, but nobody's reporting about it, except for local Mississippi outlets. But, because we had a lot of bad flooding here recently, and the thing was, they're like, well, if you didn't have flood insurance, then you can't get any FEMA money, unless you're, like a church or an nonprofit organization.
And again, it just comes down to visibility. When you had the hurricane hit New Jersey, everyone was getting support.
Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to something that I wrote years ago. Like this whole, why Project Blitz is so dangerous is that it's just another tool in the Dominionists, the Christian nationalists in their toolbox. And as Sammy so eloquently put, it's a tool of those that want to rule by Sharia law. And in a book that was written in 1987, this is how long it's been going on that I've been aware of. As I said, it's been going on since the 50s. This is what George Grant published in a book called The Changing of the Guard, Biblical Principles for political action.
What a title.
Yeah, that's a mouthful, but it's dominion we are after, not just a voice. It is dominion we are after, not just influence. It is dominion we are after, not just equal time. It is dominion we are after, world conquest. So don't tell me this is a fucking conspiracy theory. Go blow it out your ass because it's real. And this was written in 87. You're talking over 30 years ago. This fucking bullshit has been going on. And all we're seeing is, oh, that's the fringe. I've been hearing that word.
Oh, I mean, look at Washington State and the eastern side of Washington State, how they want to split off, become the 51st state Liberty. And they have all these public officials at the fundraiser for this event to try and make that happen. I mean, it's not fringe. They're being very public about it.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, it gets even better. This is from 2006 from a book called Faith in America, Changes, Challenges, New Direction. It was edited by Charles Libby, but this quote is from Gary North. So, let us be blunt about it. We must use the doctrine of religious liberty to gain independence for Christian schools until we train up a generation of people who know that there is no religious neutrality, no neutral law, no neutral education, and no neutral civil government. Then they will get busy in constructing a Bible-based social, political, and religious order which finally denies the religious liberty of the enemies of God.
Sounds like Christian nationalism.
I should say their God.
Yeah.
Because this has nothing to do with whether you're a Christian or not. I mean, I go back to the saying from Leah Burton from God's Own Party when she said that all dominionists are Christian, but not all Christians are dominionists. And that point's really super important to keep in mind.
Yeah, because they ain't gonna let liberal Christians put their doctrine out here. They ain't gonna let no liberal, we love gay Christians to be making these kind of laws and, implementing these kind of classes in public schools. Like, let's get that clear.
These liberals think people should eat. Fucking liberals.
Yeah, Sam, on that platform, I think you could run. You could be Pete Reeves' spokesperson.
Do you know how many sports cars I have? Fuck. Liberals want to eat. Liberals should get jobs. Yeah, I know, Reagan. I know. Fuck, way back in the day, that's when this shit started. Fuck.
Well, and that's the thing. She brings up, Sam just said Reagan. And this is really when the whole Christian nationalism and the dominionist theocracy started to really, really solidify was in the 1980 with Frank Schaeffer, his dad, who was, both of them were instrumental in creating the Christian right, came out with the Christian Manifesto. It's like, it's really kind of, I don't know, I'm going to just say crazy to see how organized this agenda is. I mean, these people are fucking obsessed. And trust me, I know obsession. Just ask Andrew about Jillian. I can tell you about obsession.
The music industry was in on it. The television was in on it. Billy Graham was in on it. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, no. Billy Graham wasn't just some, like, a lot of people think Billy Graham was some folksy nobody.
Oh,
I've met him. I met him.
No.
Met him when I was little. That's how I know.
I've been to more fucking crusades than I can count on two hands.
My grandmother was a good friend of his back in the day. My grandmother was crazy Bible thumper.
Yeah, there was one. We were actually flipping channels the other night, and Jonathan was like, "What the fuck?" Because it was clearly some 70s, like, it was clearly set in the 70s, but it was like a stadium full of people singing a hymn, and he was like, "What the fuck is this?" And then somebody came up on stage, and they're like, "Oh, it's part of this whatever crusade," and blah, blah. And I was like, "Yeah, that's like the Billy Graham crusade thing." And he was like, "What?" And he's like, because he knew about Billy Graham, but didn't know about the whole like organization that went into implementing all that.
And how Carmen, and remember Carmen in the 90s and DC Talk and all them. Oh,
Carmen.
I'm just a Jesus freak. Raised with that shit every morning with breakfast. Can we not watch the guy with the Christian Nazi flag every morning? Because he had his own Nazi flag, but Christian flag that he would fly every morning, and it was like, it was really creepy. It reminded me of like every colonialist film I'd ever watched as a kid, where the white people just like fuck over the natives like horribly. It reminded me of that flag every time, and he's like, "All right, let's praise Jesus." Like, no, oh no. And his Fire by Night interview, I watched his Fire by Night interview when Carmen first got into the Christian scene. He was a nobody. He was going to become a Ricky Martin and get into Latino music because he was because that was part of his background. So he was going to get into that, and then all of a sudden, the same producers that came out with DC Talk a few years later, if you remember them, Jesus Freak, when they came out later, same producers were like, "Hey, Willie George Ministries, Billy Graham, Fire by Night, all that lovely stuff.
Guaranteed money."
Yep. Yeah, let's do it, Carmen. Let's do it. So Carmen literally like got rid of like 15 manuscript songs worth of secular music and got into Christian music.
Well, because again, it's this guaranteed thing. It's like a thing that you see all the time with these like these conservative provocateurs and these Christian writers and or Christian quote unquote comedians. Is they couldn't cut it. They couldn't cut it in the city of Los Angeles. So they were like, let's go and let me rebrand and make sure I can get a check. And I'm
suddenly
like,
1984 comes along and yay, Christianity's worth money. Let's do it.
Like that's the whole thing. I mean, it still happens today. It's like it's very funny. If you're ever interested, if you see these big preachers or these televangelists or any of these provocateurs, look where their career started. You'll be surprised.
You mean like
it's dirty?
Like what happened with MC Hammer?
Yeah.
Do I dare tell the story?
Was he the one that was like the skateboarder for Jesus? Wasn't that his thing?
Who?
I met MC Hammer. I went to my cousin's bar. He was a bartender, a very good one. He used to make a killer White Russian. So I would go there to get this White Russian. Well, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't really follow, I was mostly jazz I'm still jazz, but I didn't really follow pop music much. So MC Hammer had a concert in Buffalo and was staying at the hotel that my cousin worked at. And my cousin happened to know him because of his work in theater and yada, yada, yada. So I'm at the bar drinking my White Russian, and this black dude comes up to me, and I guess you could say started flirting with me. And I'm like, okay, I've been a lesbian since I was like fucking 5. I had no interest in guys. And I'm like, oh, go away. I was like, so I'm like looking at my cousin like, help. He's the only one at the time that knew I was gay. And he's like, pulls MC aside and says, hey, you're making my cousin uncomfortable. And he stopped, and eventually he left about 20 or so minutes later. And my cousin comes up to me and goes, do you know who that was? I'm like, no, just some black dude, He's like, cuz I hate to tell you, but that was MC Hammer. I'm like,
but what year was this also?
It would have been in, this was before he went totally wackadoodle. This would have been It would have had to been after Wendy was dead because I went out. So it probably was around 88, 89.
Okay.
Ish.
Because I was like, didn't he like lose all his money?
Yeah, this is when he actually had money.
Did he come up to the bar in his parachute pants?
Yeah, was he wearing parachute pants? That is a good question.
I was pretty drunk.
When your cousin talked to him, did he leave the bar going, uh-oh?
I don't know, but it was just so funny because now it's like I look back on that and think, damn, if I was straight, I could have really hooked up for a while anyways.
No, did he let you in any way, shape, or form? Were you able to make physical contact with him to make the song null and void?
Yeah.
At any point, were you even just a single finger on his fucking body to make that song? No.
Beth, if it had worked out, if you were straight and it had worked out right now, you'd be on stage with him at the church. It would be a completely different series of events for you.
Oh yeah.
Touch this.
No. You guys wouldn't get to listen to me ramble. It's like, oh wow. And
we'd
now
be on the show talking about MC Hammer and his evangelist wife.
Yeah.
I touched him, the Holy Spirit touched me. It was a whole air gathering of touching, I tell you.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, one of our commenters in chat goes, brings a new meaning to getting hammered. And Bogey, if going on memory and how bad of a fucking drunk I really was at that point, I probably was at 5 or 6, if not more.
The White Russians can be strong.
Yes, especially when my cousin makes them like milkshakes. Oh, yeah. Those were the days, and I don't miss drinking. It's much cheaper, too. And welcome, Bogey. I'm glad you're having fun. We're having fun doing this. So, but yeah, I mean, that gives me...
I just love the idea how an hour into the show, where the topic is Project Blitz, so somebody who comes in an hour into the show.
It's gonna be like, it's the MC Hammer show.
Yeah, I never even made that connection, Steve. Oh my god.
But do you remember when MC Hammer said at the Music Awards that nobody would touch Project Blitz or this? Do you remember that? We totally made a correlation. No, they're fine. They'll catch up. Yeah. It's cool.
Well, it's really cool evangelist because he did lose his mind and was like, "Let me get this check." Which, I mean, I respect the hustle, but to a degree.
Well done, though. Seriously, well done on his part for that. I love it.
Well, for some, it's a matter of. Apparently, Kirk Cameron's always been the way he is, even when he was at the height of his popularity. MC Hammer, no. It was after he hit rock bottom, had nothing else to go for, and then realized how he could get a paycheck again.
Yeah, no, Kirk Cameron was always annoying as fuck and could have had a completely different career trajectory had he not been so annoying. And I love this narrative, too. I mean, it goes back to this whole Project Blitz thing where they claim so much to be persecuted and they're the victims or whatever, when it's clear that it's projection all on their part because they are the ones that are looking out to persecute and marginalize everybody else. But yeah, again, it's like the whole Kirk Cameron, like, oh, well, the reason, like, he does Christian movies and he's not Hollywood's biggest star is obviously because he's Christian. It's like, no, it's because you were annoying as fuck and a pain in the ass to work with. Like, no one wanted to fucking work with you.
Well, it's just like Kevin Sorbo.
Yeah, exactly. And also, he was a creep on set, too.
And
I just read about that.
Accused in the last 24 hours. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Of some type of sexual misconduct?
Yeah, which, I mean, that hasn't stopped a man's career from, benefiting himself before, but,
I actually met Bruce Campbell and Ted Raimi a couple weeks back in Niagara Falls. And
sweet.
They both had glowing things to say about their time on Xena, and they had absolutely nothing pleasant to say about Hercules.
I've heard the same thing from, other people have said.
They're both hilarious and good guys.
Yeah. It's really pathetic to see how for some individuals, I mean, I don't want to be too over sweeping here, that this fall into religion or indoctrination into religion as a child has, like, these people have literally lost their minds.
It becomes their personality.
Yeah, well,
it's their whole personality.
I know when I deconverted and I was at my worst with my bipolar, within, I would say, 9 months of deconverting and actually admitting to myself I was an atheist, I have had very few issues with my bipolar, with my mental illness. Because, I mean, I had it drummed into me from day one that I was a sinner, I was a bad person, I was going to amount to nothing, and yada, yada, yada. So I can see how that type of mentality would create the cretins that we have, Kevin Sorbo.
It's a matter of how saturated they are in that toxic environment. I read an article a woman did a couple months back about how her father was a very open-minded guy, and then he spent nothing but his days watching Fox News. And within a matter of years, he completely transformed. And then after he had to move in with her, Fox News wasn't on in the house, and after a couple months, he was back to his old self, not being so full of hate and anger all the time.
And we all know that Xena was the better show anyways. Like, Hercules was just an intro to learn about Xena, and then you watched Xena and enjoyed it way better.
Bruce Campbell talked about that and why he kept going back to New Zealand to be on Xena more so than Hercules.
And, like, Lucy Lawless would, like, meet with the fans and empower women fans, whereas Hercules would be like, oh, did you know that Jesus and my penis? Like, that's literally would be the only things he would talk about.
Jesus and my penis?
That's literally like the only things he would talk about, apparently. I've seen some Sorbo interviews.
And if you want a contradiction between the two shows, Hercules on that show wound up embracing Christianity when they introduced that. Xena, on the other hand, at first embraced it too, and then eventually she was at war with all the angels and archangels as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbolism. We could like totally go down the rabbit hole, but yeah, it's crazy to see how, whether it be religion or the propaganda from Fox News primarily. I mean, some of the other stations aren't much better, but Fox News is primarily the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, Sinclair as well. Yeah, which, I mean, it goes to the whole, like, dominionist thing, where it's like, eventually they make it to where the public school system basically becomes Fox News.
Yeah.
And then you indoctrinate, and then it makes it all the more easier for them to take over.
Which is a good segue into the next part is, who are the players, who are involved in putting this whole shebang together. Well, my favorite, and Chris Rada's favorite, who has been a frequent guest on the show when we discussed David Barton, and the National Prayer Caucus Foundation. Two topics that we've covered extensively on our show over the course of 4+ years, or are we past 5 now? I can't remember. I'm terrible. But yeah, these folks are the ones responsible for this playbook. And the official title of it is Report and Analysis on Religious Freedom, Measures Impacting Prayer and Faith in America. And talk about a fucking mouthful.
They are great at these titles.
Oh my God.
Great at branding.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it is, branding.
Well, I mean, it's terrible branding. So at least they're not good at, like, coming up with catchphrases like, I don't know, it's lit, fam. Here's our plan.
Oregon. But yeah, this document or this report or whatever the fuck you want to call it is basically divided into 3 categories. And okay, my notes are a little squirrely here. So the first category is legislation regarding our country's religious heritage. The second category, and we'll touch on these, revolutions or resolutions and proclamations recognizing the importance of religious history and freedom. I hate these titles. Religious liberty protection legislation, which is category 3. So, without actually reading the document verbatim out loud, there's really no easy way to describe these categories. I mean, as I said, I will put the link to the document in the show notes after we're done, because I forgot to before, and you can actually read this. But basically, category 1 is stuff to promote the Christian nationalist mindset, the propaganda, so to speak. And basically, it's their belief that America was founded as a Christian nation and continues to be a Christian nation.
This is all just BS to me, because if you look at their talking points and the things they want to focus on for 2019, Project Blitz, 3 out of the 4 have to do with getting rid of transgender or LGBT rights for overall. And to me, when they're in power, and it's just a matter of, they don't really care about that. It's a matter of using fear and using bigotry to get support. Mm-hmm. And when they pass these bills to attack the LGBT community, then they can say, oh, look what we did for you. We got rid of the gays. We got rid of the transgender people. Keep us in power. Because I have a feeling they don't actually give a rat's ass about any of it. They just want to use it as a tool to get power and get money.
Well, yeah, and it goes back to before the transgendered issue became an issue. We had the LGBT, which is still, or the anti-gay, anti-lesbian, which is still, prevalent. And you had the abortion issue. You had the issue.
Well, I mean, thanks to TV. I mean, there's a lot of gay role models, so they've lost a lot of the ground. You look at national polls. The vast majority support marriage equality, so they can no longer be the targets they used to be. So that's why they've switched gears to the transgender community instead. And
but I think they still genuinely hate LGBTQ people of all kinds. They do genuinely hate them. I think they just recognize that they've lost this hill.
They do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the same thing. They didn't stop hating black people any less. They just don't talk about it as much.
They're just like, this isn't the hill that we can die on because we don't have as much popular support. But if we can rally the troops around trans people, then, that's another hill that we can go on another day.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's not just one other they pick on. They have rotated through all of them.
Yeah, in different ways. Like, because there's still acceptable ways to be racist according to the GOP.
They rotated through them all. I mean, look at conservatives right now with illegal immigration. That's just another rotation into creating a target for them to focus their hate on.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There's only certain things they know there's certain third rails they can't touch, but they can still, there's certain dog whistles they can still always employ, and they can know that the right people will pick up on it, but everybody else who picks up on it, they can just call us all crazy. So, I mean, that's still a tactic of theirs, but they know that, if we can roll back, trans rights and we can, keep them from gaining further rights, then, eventually we can go back to fighting marriage equality. Then we can go back to fighting, these other battles that we've lost, but they just recognize that right now, that's not really the hill to die on because nobody is supporting that cause as much. But even then, it doesn't necessarily matter the popular support, because if you have the courts and the power, it doesn't matter.
In the 80s, it was easy for them to demonize them because they just had the AIDS virus to blame on them for it.
Yeah.
So that inspired the fear that they needed.
And now we can clearly see that the pharmaceutical companies that had the cure, not methods for treating it, the cure for AIDS, were hindered from releasing it by who? Oh gosh, the 90s Republican Party.
Yeah.
And not to go down that rabbit hole, but that is tangentially related to this.
The cure, not just treatment, cure. It's existed for ages.
But it's just it's crazy. I mean, we have people like David Barton, like Dinesh D'Souza, and there's a couple other revisionists that I'm aware of, but I'm not real familiar with their work. They're presenting this revisionist history. They're presenting it as a accurate historical narrative, and people have accepted it without question. Then you have somebody like like Chris, myself, and others that have written against people like Barton, and we're the ones that are called conspiracy theorists. It's like, seriously? I mean, they have literally...
They have documents out there that you can read, but which is all made up.
Yeah, it's exactly. I mean, and like, this is something I know we've talked about prior when Chris has been on this show, that Barton claims to have all these historical sources. And like, if you've ever read one of his books, and trust me, some of them are a nightmare. Yes, I have read them.
I was about to say, why would you subject yourself to reading a book from David Barton?
She was in a depression low. She wanted to self-hurt somehow. It's what she decided on. Like.
Cutting yourself would be a preferable alternative.
Well, no, because I'm a former cutter.
Oh, okay, well.
I'd rather read a David Barton book. But I mean, people are accepting
That's a slogan.
That should be the slogan of your self-help book right there.
I'd rather be reading David Barton.
To show how effective it is.
Well, lately, I mean, I got Kent Hovind I listened to, David Barton. You don't want to know who Alex Jones.
You need a hug?
At least Alex Jones does, I mean, he's a horrible person, and I hate him, but at least sometimes it's just like, wait, what the fuck is happening?
Yes.
And it's just you can't help but laugh.
Yes, don't overload yourself. And if at any point you start to think, maybe some of the things they're saying, abort, just detox.
Well, maybe the frogs are going gay.
You make a really valid point there, Steve, because when I was researching the Nephilim, and I deep dived into the Nephilim, it got to the point where I did have to stop because what I was reading, what I was watching, actually started to affect how I thought.
Yeah, it affects your brain chemistry.
Yeah, I mean, so you get a dose of Barton, you get a dose of Franklin Graham or Ann Lutz or any one of the vast number of nut jobs out there propagating this stuff. It's going to affect how you think, like you were saying about the woman's father who watched nothing but Fox News. I mean, so, and if you don't have the wherewithal to quote fact check, or it's going to affect you. It's going to affect how you think, and that's what they count on. And they don't want critical thinking skills. They don't want a smart populace. They want to dumb it down as far as they can. And, I've been saying that for at least 5 years.
I just don't know how I get how they inspire these people to think these horrible thoughts, and then I don't know how they suddenly segued into it Now just buy my book for $29.99. Buy this bucket of food, this doomsday bucket of food. I don't know how they manage to segue it into their sales pitches all the time.
Well, I don't know if you've ever watched AIG, Ham and Eggs, or, well, that's Paul Oge's take on it, but Ken Ham has a show called AIG News, Answers in Genesis News, and there's at least 4 book plugs in a 30-minute show. So I look at somebody like Jim Baker, and that's who sells the food buckets, and from people that have done taste testing, the stuff is absolutely horrid.
Well, you don't sell it on taste, you sell it on fear.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're basically manipulating individuals' fears to sell this crap, and it is crap. And I think what was brought up concerning MC Hammer resurrecting his career by going Christian, it all comes down to money. The want of money, the want of power. I mean, even
I just mean in terms of people being brainwashed to the point where when it segues into that sales pitch, they don't go, now wait a minute, they're just after my money.
Oh no, those are true believers. Like Tucker Carlson, I would say he's a true believer because he doesn't need the fucking money. But he, at the same time, I do see him as an opportunist because he has rode this wave of white Christian nationalism as far as it has gone. But yeah, I definitely believe he's a true believer because he's heir to the Swanson food fortune, so he doesn't need the paycheck from Fox.
Oh, I forgot about that.
But it's just a matter of, if you don't want money, sometimes you want power, sometimes you want fame. And that's
sometimes you want
how to get it. Because trust me, if he didn't have his views, he would not be famous for anything.
Well, I mean, but yeah, that's the thing. But also at the same time, it's like it also, to him, he's also able to inflict this power over people and inflict his hatred on others that he doesn't like. He doesn't like people who aren't, rich, white, heirs to fortunes. So he can lord it over them, and also at the same time to garner popularity, cosplay as a working class dude, which is what I call the Trump boys. They're redneck cosplayers. Because he comes out of Louisiana acting like he's like this Southern boy, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here. That shit pisses me off so much.
I think, though, Steve does bring up a valid point, is that, how fucking indoctrinated, how fucking brainwashed are just the general populace in accepting the message they propagate. And
look at Fox News. I mean, it's been so effective, and literally, like, you were saying, it was, that woman who had her father-in-law, that was watching Fox News, went from a reasonable person to somebody who was, a hateful bigot. And it's like, that's happening with millions of people. I mean, it's still America's #1 news network, and it's infecting millions and millions of people every single day. And that's what it's doing. It's infecting people. And, it's not just Fox News, it's these online, you see with YouTube even, YouTube and the, white nationalists and the Christian nationalists on there, that the algorithm is being skewed towards. Because it's like, I was literally watching a makeup tutorial the other day, and I had a white nationalist video be suggested. And like, the little videos that come up on stuff that you can watch like after, at the bottom of the screen on my phone. Yeah, I was literally watching a makeup tutorial, and so they're like, you wanted to see a reviewer of this bronzer. How about some white nationalism?
I've had some weird algorithms when on my channel Atheist News. It says you might also be interested, and it lists all these Muslim hate channels. And I'm like, how is that on there? And I don't mean like people who hate Muslims. I mean Muslim channels that hate on everybody who's not a Muslim. And I was like, how does my channel, Atheist News, correlate with those channels?
Yeah, it's weird. It's this weird algorithm, and I think it's the whole thing where, and they're trying to get it to where, like, oh, we know that this hateful content, like, it's, you know, that's what's going to get us clicks, that's what's going to get the money. I mean, that's just how it's going to go. I mean, this is how Fox News, I mean, they're making all this money for a reason, obviously, because they figured out how to push out this propaganda and how to get people coming back to that propaganda, and it's fucking scary. And it is Project Blitz, like the fact that it's going to take that propaganda and essentially put it into legislation and into motion. And so it's going to get worse if it's implemented.
How can hate be an industry? I mean, that's just
very profitable. Because it makes people feel, I feel like it's this whole thing where it makes people feel superior to others and ultimately makes them feel special. That they figured it out and that they're not one of these dumb liberals who thinks, you know, people deserve to have health care. They're not fooled by any of the establishment or whatever. Yeah, it's the same thing of why people believe in conspiracy theories, and this is just based on my own conjecture. You know, it's this need to feel like you figured it out. You figured it out. You're the chosen one. You're the real America, not like those people, you know, and that gives people a sense of pride, whether they're, you know, these rich white people like Tucker Carlson or these, you know, which, I mean, working class people did vote for Clinton in higher numbers than Trump. But, you know, the narrative, of course, is that, you know, the real America voted for Trump, you know, even though that's not necessarily true. I mean, yeah, there are some working class people who did. But, I mean, if you look at the numbers, it is middle class to upper class white people voted for Trump. But there's this need to feel like, oh, well, Trump voters are a real America. And even amongst liberals, I've even seen this kind of like the buying into the propaganda that like, oh, we need to figure out what this real America thing is, when it's like, no, motherfucker, like Los Angeles, New York City, like these liberal enclaves, they're still in America. Like, am I crazy?
Well, it's like the meme I saw, and I'm paraphrasing this probably horribly. It goes, you know, we're the only country that has a constituency that have billionaires convincing middle class America that brown people from Mexico are stealing their jobs.
Oh no, the Tories in the UK have been doing that for Brexit and all that. I was there doing that. That was fun to see that recreating itself over there. I was like, oh god, the last time this kind of rhetoric was in Europe, it was a very weird time for everyone. Let's stop. Yeah, but yeah, I was there during Brexit, and it was crazy how while it wasn't as, I would say, extreme as the Fox News, kind of, because they don't have an equivalent of Fox News over there, but I mean, I guess they do still have, you know, the newspapers. They have like the newspaper equivalents of, you know, various Fox News, like
Murdoch's papers.
Yeah, the Sun and all that kind of stuff. But still, I was seeing that rhetoric that, you know, you would hear from like these Fox News commentators and these evangelists over here, kind of recreated over there. It was like, oh, well, these immigrants are coming in because of the European Union and they're taking our jobs.
And they're got a prime minister who's a lot like Trump.
Well, it's funny because everything we've just talked about in the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so is actually part of category 3. The idea being that once we've normalized and cemented this specific brand of hate, Christianity, as the default and preferred status of all people in the country, we then can start actively working at using religious liberty as a cudgel to, why I use that word, I'll never know, to take away. It's a good word, but it's a hell of a word to pronounce, to take away the rights of people. And that's
they know that. It's never about actual religious liberty, but the thing is, if they can trick people into having this debate, with them about, well, aren't you for religious liberty? Aren't you? Now you just want to persecute people, and they know it's fucking bullshit. And it's just like the whole white nationalist thing. They're like, oh, well, you should debate me in the marketplace of ideas. And it's like, but I know that you are not arguing this in good faith.
Right.
You are not arguing in good faith, therefore...
It's like the people who want to argue climate change versus scientists like Bill Nye, and everyone's like, why is Bill Nye wasting his time in this debate? There's no point to it.
Yeah, but it's making it look like as if there is one, and then as if they're arguing in good faith, and they just want to know the science, and they just want more facts, when really it's just to make it appear as if they are, in fact, the winning position. And it's the same with this religious liberty. They are in no means interested in actual religious liberty. But if they can fool people on, the other side into thinking it is, then all the more easier for them.
Well, I believe, going to the debate strategy, I believe it was Ken Ham. And I think this was prior to the Bill Nye debate, was that the only reason he wants to debate is to legitimize the fact that there is a controversy.
Yeah.
And Bill Nye, in response to that, if I remember correctly, and this is also a point that I try to stress with people, they're like, why do you waste time debating anti-vaxxers, etc., is that I'm not targeting who I'm debating. I'm targeting my audience. I could give a flying fuck what Joe Blow or Jane Blow think or believe in, because I know they are wrong. And what they do, and this goes for with the political aspect of it, with the religious freedom, as you noted, Morgan, was that I could cite hundreds, if not thousands, of studies depending on what topic. If it was peppered moth, it'd be close to 1,000 because I love the peppered moth. But it's not going to convince the person I'm arguing with. But if somebody on the fence, especially with vaccines, see all these studies and, whether they're from the CDC or I like to use studies from overseas when it's vaccine, because then they can't, then they have to go deeper into their conspiracy. And that's when you can point out that you're fucking nuts.
Yeah, and sometimes they're just very charismatic people. They have a lot of showmanship, and they have the power to
that's what matters.
People on the fence, regardless of the facts. And it's just a shame when that happens, because eventually the person is probably going to see through their bullshit. But how many years of their lives are they going to waste believing it just because they believed the lie?
Yeah. Well, I've caught myself a couple times because I had some kind of, I'll use the whole thing with AIDS being man-made as a means to control the African population to prevent them immigrating to the United States. I fell for that for years. I believed that it was a man-made virus and that there was this nefarious means behind why, the AIDS virus became as popular as it did in the 80s as far as the debate about it. And it was probably a good 15 years before the reality of it sunk in. And it's like, God, what a fucking idiot I was. I wasted 15 years propagating that lie. Same thing. I never, as far as vaccination, I never had an issue with vaccination. I've been vaxxed my whole life. And the first thing I did when I got medical insurance after my strokes was updated all my vaccinations. I have to because I'm, being diabetic, I'm immunocompromised. Same thing with, I've never had an issue with climate change as I'm sitting here like melting at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, I don't have a hard time accepting the science behind it. And that's what people behind this Project Blitz are relying on, is that people aren't going to look this shit up. They aren't going to. and
in fact, that if you're a real Christian, you're not going to, because you got to have faith.
Well, that's the thing. If you're a real Christian,
yeah,
i.e., if you're my kind of Christian, and that's what makes this dangerous.
They're cracking the whip to keep people in line.
Exactly. Yep. And Ken Ham, I've quoted this a couple times, basically said that the whole thing behind like why he fights for creationism is a matter of authority. This way, if they, quote, prove creation true, that means the Bible is true. That means God, or I, as a Christian, whatever he is, he's not really an apologist, but that means that Christianity or Christian Sharia law is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, that's why they push for creationism in school. That's why they push for, anti-LGBTQI issues. That's why they push for anti-abortion issues, because if they can get the moral superiority and prove it's true, that's all they need.
Well, this is depressing.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think, I had to pull back because you just said it, and it's depressing.
It is. It's like there's a huge cabal and conspiracy, or it's not even a conspiracy theory. It's a literal this is an effort. It's a conspiracy to use this incremental legislation to accomplish all these larger goals throughout these, Project Blitz, this propaganda through Fox News, things that we've talked about, and this whole dominionism thing. That's all tied into it. And it's just like, you just can't help but be like, well, what's going to happen, or, what can we do to stop it? Because it does seem like it's bigger than, you can take on.
Well, the only thing that comes to my mind as a solution is those of us that are against this type of thing, we have to vote, people. We have to get these idiots.
You got governors like Matt Bevin. You got governors like Kristi Noem.
It's not even the national so much as it is the local, the regional, and on the state level. If the Republicans, or, for lack of a better word, get, I think, was it 1 or 2 more states, they can convene a convention of the states and alter our Constitution. And this is something they're actively trying to do. And the only way they can do that is if people are being lackadaisical in their voting.
Or also that goes into the whole, suppression of voting.
Mm-hmm.
Or the redrawing of congressional districts.
Thank you. Well, one of their goals, it may not necessarily be specific in Project Blitz, but the Dominionists as a whole is to revoke the right of women to vote.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder specifically which women that will be, because again, it's the whole, white women obviously have no problem voting in this kind of heinous shit. So I'm wondering if they're even that worried about that. But the whole thing with, getting out to vote vote if you can, because the whole thing is voter suppression's a thing. And so something that I also keep in mind is I live in a place that is, historically, Mississippi has made voter suppression an art form, for lack of a better word, especially since, the Shelby County case came down, basically saying that we no longer needed the Justice Department's permission to change voting laws because, we have a history with some fuckery when it comes to voting. But they were like, oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Just let them do whatever the fuck they want to. Whatever. But so what I keep in mind is I have to get out the vote as much as I can here, and I have to vote for everything, because what I have to remember is the vote is being suppressed here, and I have to get people out who can.
Right.
I have to go for those who can't. I have to do that, because I mean, that's the only chance that we have, is to, register people, is to get out and educate
What's
people,
crazy is that
take people to the polls.
States like Kentucky are trying to introduce laws where college students who originally come from out of state aren't able to vote in their state.
So
man, it's just like how toxic, how obvious can you be that it's not about who actually lives in the state, it's about the way they're voting.
Yeah, I mean, completely, because if it were the opposite, and it's the same with, like, Mitch McConnell talking about statehood for DC and Puerto Rico, when he was like, oh, it's a socialist agenda, which I love how now socialism is anything Republicans don't like. But anyways, and the whole thing where they're saying, oh, well, and the reason they don't want that is because those would be Democratic states, but bet your ass, if those were conservative places, Mitch McConnell, they would have been
they'd be
states.
all over it.
They would have been states. They would have been, like, and not even working on it. They would have been states. But because, they don't want people in DC and people in Puerto Rico to, have a say in what happens in this country, then they're not everyone else here.
Yeah. Well, so one solution is to vote. So another solution I was thinking, well, I don't know if it's a solution, but is talking like we are tonight. And like Kelly did on Atheist Manifesto last week or the week before. Is it important for us to talk about it? Or are we just blowing smoke up our own asses?
No, because I think it is important to talk about, because, I mean, a lot of people, I feel like, don't know that this is part of a bigger effort. They just see, and because I see this in the comments, I even see this from other humanists or atheists, that are saying, well, or, people of all different faiths who, they might be like, well, I don't like the, in God we trust tag, but what's the big deal? Aren't there better and bigger things to fight about? Like, I mean, the Trump administration has fucking concentration camps, and y'all are worried about a license plate, and it's like, having that conversation about how this is part of a bigger plan, which, I mean, I feel like people don't realize, because
it's not just how much they want to alter inside the United States. I mean, they created the International Religious Freedom, branch of the government to try and influence laws in other countries. They're trying to make sure their ambassadors don't fly their pride flag during Pride Month. It's absolutely absurd that they not only want to alter the United States, but alter the world as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, this is global. Yeah, for sure it's global. But right now, I mean, I feel like they have, and they do, they have a foothold here. And I mean, we're seeing kind of this thing happen in, countries like Brazil right now, countries like Hungary, in Eastern Europe and Italy. We're seeing this happen again.
Hungary has always had a problem. Back in the 70s, they outlawed music.
Yeah, there's always been a history with Hungary, but yeah, one of my friends, her mother is Hungarian, so yeah, I'm familiar with some of their bonkers implementations, but yeah, I mean, we're seeing this happen again, and it's with the full support, of the United States, that we have these leaders that, and also, this whole excuse of, oh, we can look the other way, whereas before, or, even with, a different administration, maybe things would be different, and we could implement policies to kind of keep the spread from happening. But
Russia used to be like the favorite enemy of conservatives, but now that Russia has become a wildly conservative themselves, outlawing, homosexuality, in public,
implementing an oligarchy where the wealth is concentrated.
They may have invaded the Ukraine, but they're not all bad.
And also, people aren't taught that they're essentially like a completely different government now. Like, I still see people being like, Trump is conspiring with communists, and I'm like, no. Oh my God, it's an oligarchy now. You learn something, read. Oh my God.
And that goes back to why, and my initial question is talking about this important, and not to make it sound like I don't think it is, because I do, or we wouldn't be doing this show right now. But I think, that's the thing. People just don't know. Like you said, the Russia is communist. Like, no, they're not communists. They haven't been communists for quite a while.
Yeah, for decades now. But yeah, it's just, and I mean, you have to think about this. I mean, most people are also, worried about everyday life, or not like looking up, conspiracies that the religious right is, coming up with. So yeah, that's another reason why these conversations are important, because you're also not seeing this being reported in mass. Like, I'm not seeing this trending on Twitter. I'm not seeing this, Project Blitz being covered by CNN.
What happened in the last 10 years is that the internet used to be just a wealth of information. Now it's become a wealth of information and misinformation. And that's another problem.
Yeah, it's just, there's so much out there that it's even, it's just content. Yeah. It's just what it is now. And I mean, like we were saying about the debates, the people with the showmanship, the people with the, charisma. Charisma. I mean, say what you will about Alex Jones, but
well, it goes back to something I said before the show concerning She Who Shall Remain Nameless. Her tactic of late is posting these seemingly random search results, not understanding that the words you type in to do a search will be words that are part of the document that you pull up. And then she posts this seemingly random study that has really absolutely nothing to do with it, just because that's the word she searched. So that's what's going to come up. She doesn't understand that, as far as like the quote fake news, I mean, there's just so much crap being spouted, but you gotta at least read the information that's pulled up. I mean, I've been doing memes.
Oh, here's a bunch of words that'll just back up what I'm saying.
I mean, I've been doing memes like She Who Remain Nameless posts this study saying XYZ supports my JJ Jilly Juice, for those that don't know what JJ is. I pull up the initial study or the article in quotes to the study, and it's like, it doesn't support her contention at all. I mean, exact opposite. So it's like, I don't know. I'm 99.9% sure this person does not read beyond the Google search. And I think that is just, shows that people pull up information, but they don't actually read it. They just headline hop. Oh, this headline agrees with me. And they leave it at that. They don't go any farther.
It's like people, it happens to everybody. People who read Onion headlines thinking that that's actually happening.
Which, how people are still fooled by the Onion is remarkable to me.
Some of them are better than reality. That's the problem.
They are very good. I do enjoy the Onion. They have been very on point here recently with their satire, but or even just mocking.
You see the website that's very similar to the Onion, Babylon Bee, which kind of makes religious-leaning headlines, and I've seen atheists share them as if they're real stories, such as Iceland banning evangelicals from entering the country. That's not actually true.
No,
but I see atheists share it, going, "Wow, good for Iceland, way to go!" And it's like, come on, guys. I mean, that's not actually happening.
I do hate Babylon Bee though, because the content people, they're very if you do see some of their other little satire articles, they're very I would say anti-humanist.
Really?
Yes, very anti-humanist. They do claim that we poke fun at ourselves, so it's fine. But yeah, they do. I've seen some things where I'm just like, yikes, on several bikes. But yeah, I don't fuck with the Babylon Bee.
I mean, I just see them from what people share of them.
Yeah, I've seen atheists do that too, and I'm like, I used to live there. No. No, they're not a thing. But
so, I mean, it happens to both sides, both.
Oh yeah, I see
and
that.
Atheists in terms of sharing misinformation because they agree with it.
Or like I do also think that it's interesting how sometimes headlines which is something I was taught the opposite to do in journalism school, but I've noticed a lot of like burying leads. I'm like, wow, that was the pertinent information that should have been in the fucking headline, but all right, like, did y'all not go to J school? Like, because when I was there, I was, taught things like also not to bend over backwards in the name of neutrality because the facts are the facts and that's not your fucking problem. But apparently none of these other fuckers learned that.
So like an example would be like, no fries today at the school cafeteria. And then in the article you read it's because the cafeteria worker was killed.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like... Or like, oh, no fries at the cafeteria today, but then you find one random person who says there is. So, therefore, we've presented both sides. What are the facts? You decide. And I'm like, no, find out what's going on.
Look at this audience of 3,000 people eating fries. Clearly this happened. It's like, 200 people.
Yeah, it's like, report what is actually happening. Like, you could say the other person's in denial, but then later say what the actual situation is.
Did
like,
you know the salt content? Did you know the salt content on the fries, the crispy? It happens. It happens, sadly.
It does.
So,
fried journalism.
Before we get too far down and way off into the rabbit and gopher holes, we are coming up towards the end. So, Steve, final thoughts concerning Project Blitz.
Project Blitz is definitely a problem that needs to be addressed in the voting booth. And it needs to be addressed in the courts as well, because all these gerrymandering of the districts will, I mean, you can get people out to vote, but it's a matter of these districts being shaped correctly to represent the actual concentration of voters, because these people keep getting elected and they keep pushing through these bills. And it's not just a matter of how awful these bills are. It's a matter of how much time is wasted and spent on either trying to stop them or trying to stop them, and then they still get passed, and then you have to go to the courts and waste courts' time trying to get it overturned. And as much effort and organized as Project Blitz is, it's going to take just as much or even more to stop it.
Morgan?
Yeah, I don't want to say we are all truly fucked because this has kind of been my thing lately. I don't know if it's just a recent bout of pessimism and general depression about everything, but I'm just like, yeah, well, maybe one day I'll sit on a raft all smug and I'll smoke a cigarette and look over at what used to be Antarctica and have some kind of satisfaction that I was right. But that day hopefully will not come. So yes, if you do not want to be stuck with me on a raft as I smoke a cigarette and act all smug about everything while we look at what used to be Antarctica, then yeah, you should vote and have these conversations with people and say, whenever you see somebody, and you'll see people say, oh, well, these little laws, they don't matter. There's bigger things going on. Say, no, they do. And while, yes, they can serve the purpose of being, I know how people these days, they love to all say, oh, this is a distraction from blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, as I like to say. You can pay attention to multiple things. I do it all day. It's not that difficult because, as I discussed previously, I have about 2 brain cells by 5 p.m. Yeah. So if I can manage to do that, then surely you can as well. So yeah, have these conversations, talk about it. I mean, yeah, Will you sound like a crazy conspiracy theorist? Maybe. But then, these documents are out here. You can Google Project Blitz. It comes up. Like, that's the thing. I think Americans United for Separation of Church and State, they have this document up on their site. Like, you can pull it, you can look at it, and it's there. It's not some like weird InfoWars link that you got to click 3 more links to go and see some weird obscure YouTube video for. Like, it's there. So yeah, the evidence is there. I mean,
it's 148 pages. It is clearly organized.
It's very organized. It is impeccably organized.
Thorough.
Great organization skills on your part. But no, you should not be proud of yourself for making that. But yeah, you just have these conversations, vote. If you voting is not enough.
I just mean like the threat is real. Like,
yeah, it is. It's here, so voting is not going to be enough. What you need to do, talk to 5 friends about voting. See if they have a plan to vote. Register people. Do you have 5 friends who aren't registered to vote? Then
having 5 friends.
Yeah, yeah, 5 people you know.
Person, yeah.
Let's not go crazy with us saying you have 5 friends. I know I'm just trying to make myself sound cooler than I am, but I mean, surely there are 5 people that you are aware of their existence.
So somebody watching this with no friends is crying in the corner right now.
There are 5 people you know. Your family. Maybe your family. But yeah, but I mean, even if you are like, people on Facebook or Twitter, have conversations and be like, hey, what's your plan to vote? Do you need a ride to the polls? Give people rides to the polls. You can register people. It's not hard to actually register people to vote. Again, in most states, it's relatively simple. You can find forms online. You can ask your circuit clerk in your local courthouse for forms. But yeah, I mean, that's what you have to do. You have to get out the vote. You have to make people aware of what's going on, and you have to make plans to do that with other people who may not be voting.
Excellent. Now, Sammy, I know you're in Canada, so like the Project Blitz thing is not up there in the form it is here in the States.
It's still happening here in its own way.
Yes, it is. Anything else to add to that, my dear?
Yeah, vote NDP and look up your local Nazi get-together that's happening in your city, because they're happening all over Canada, whether we want to admit it or not. Go there and punch a Nazi. Do the world a favor, please. Thank you.
So I don't really have anything to add other than what I've said throughout the show, because I think both Steve and Morgan and Sam in the effects up in Canada have really summed it up, is that, educate yourself. I have put some links in the show description. I will add the link to the actual Project Blitz document, and I think I got it from ACLU. I also have projectblitzwatch.org is one of the links. They have all the various groups that are actively trying to combat this, ACLU being one of them. American Atheists, I believe, is on that list, as is Freedom from Religion Foundation. Your typical groups that we're, familiar with. So that was our attempt to cover Project Blitz. As you see, we went down a few rabbit holes, but not too many. We stayed on pretty good on target today. As usual, or as I posted in both the group and on the page, we are going to a bi-weekly schedule instead of trying to pull this off every week. My job right now is being a bear. It's summertime. It's also festival time. And being in Pennsylvania here, it's like we have all these little festivals and we get crowds of people at really strange times. Like the other day, we got busy at 2:30 in the afternoon with a party of 30. we had 2 people on the schedule in the kitchen. So, yeah, it gets a little busy. And I know Morgan's busy at work, and Sam is still...
I just got promoted at my job, actually,
yeah,
so I've got a lot more shit happening.
So we're going to go to bi-weekly. We're also going to change the time temporarily till 9:30 p.m. again, just like tonight. Again, it's because of work interrupting with our lives. Haha. But, so we will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you all for listening. Please go out and vote. Please educate yourself. And while you're doing it, have some fun. Don't get too depressed about it. Talk to people. All the suggestions we attempted to make. And with that, I will bid you all adieu. And have a great night. And see you in 2 weeks.
Be well.
Night, y'all. And Steve, I almost forgot. Thank you for joining us. Duh.
It's my pleasure.
It's like, oh yeah,
yes, thank you.
Steve out of the mix. Yeah, Steve had just done a pod. Oh, I know what I'm forgetting. Steve, where can we find you? I'm getting tired.
I am the host, writer, director, editor, pretty much everything on Atheist News. You can find my channel youtube.com/c/atheist news. And tomorrow I'm doing a live show with 2 people. Viewers might know them as Morgan and Beth from Beyond the Trailer Park, as we hold Atheist Jeopardy, which should be a whole lot of fun.
Wait a minute, I'm competing against Morgan?
Yes.
Only Morgan?
And my patron, Stephen Byers.
Oh, dang. Dang, I get to watch. I get to watch my 2 former co-hosts squirm.
Oh dear. Squirm. Well, I'm gonna lose.
No.
I'm just gonna sit back and get drunk and eat popcorn. Apparently, I'm free that night, so I'm good.
So if I create a category that's all just hockey trivia.
Oh
okay.
Shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Now I want to take Beth on though. Damn it! Ugh. Ugh.
And Morgan,
I'll be Beth's call a friend if she needs help.
Yeah.
You call a friend.
Where can we find you, my dear?
All right, you can find me on Twitter at Mostring, MOSTRING. You can also find me on Instagram there, and you can find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer.
And Miss Sammy, can we find you anywhere yet?
I'm still just on Facebook. I'm still just on Facebook for the moment there, Samantha Mondegreen.
Excellent. And easiest way to find me is Twitter, Dune9998. That connects to my blog, Havoc and Chaos. Currently, I am still knee-deep in She Who Will Remain Nameless for the moment, as I try not to bring it up. I'll just say she's really fucking gun off her rocker. But I've been posting also more at my group I Science Do You. Basically, it's science, so if you're not into science, it might bore you, but I try to find pertinent articles that aren't completely related to She Who Will Remain Nameless. So, it's a nice diversion. And you can find me on Facebook at Beth A. Hambridge. If you send a friend request, try to note that it's show related, or I most likely will ignore you unless you have friends in common. So, and with that, now I will properly end the show. Not my strong suit tonight, but so see you all 2 weeks. Y'all have a good night and peace out.